have visited Sue, they've tried to find out more information to work out who the Ace Alliance is, and they think they're cracking it. I'll continue. Around the Earth, and with varying amounts of efficiency, justice was being done for the planet's wild things. This was a day when, had they had the ability to understand, the dwindling cheetah population would have expressed gratitude to the Ace Alliance. A large operation involving the illegal trade in cheetah cubs had been raided in South Africa. The most in danger of all of Africa's cats would have a slightly better chance in the wild when the criminals involved found out what it was like to be in captivity themselves. Also, it was revealing to read the Western Daily Press and the Bath Chronicle accounts about the Geographic Council for better understanding. If the reports were correct, it seemed that many well-meaning young folk had been attracted to the organisation. It seemed that it would provide them opportunity to share in worthwhile projects overseas and at home, also extending opportunity to field study to enhance some degree courses. However, the underlying aims of the organisation's architect was to send these eager young people off to study people, places, flora and fauna, with a view to opening up more and more of the Earth's resources for illegal capitalisation. It seemed there had been some very serious training exercises on moorlands of Britain, and that the earlier recruits to the organisation, though mostly university undergraduates, were not using their own minds anymore. They'd been trained to obey orders. When in the field, to orders yield had become a frightening motto across the front cover of a 32-page booklet presented to each participant in training. 3 of these courses were to be taken before any young willing ones could apply for an overseas field trip. A Bristol MP had joined forces with David Brentland, and the 2 of them would be calling for a tightening up of charity law. Also, the academic world was being encouraged to be more aware of the ease with which young, intelligent, well-motivated minds could be diverted to use that intelligence in a wrong way. Indeed, one father of a student who had become involved at Exeter University told the Western Daily Press that his son had become involved in training thinking that it would benefit his overall understanding of zoology. The father, Jack Coombs of Taunton, was quoted as comparing the National Geographic Council for Better Understanding to the Nazi Hitler Youth Movement. The problem, it seemed, for the authorities were going to be working out who in the organisation had committed crimes and who had done so willfully. The Bath Chronicle writer described this Stanhurst-inspired association as being like an egg that looked fine from the outside but smelled foul once it was cracked open. Danny had been reading these newspaper accounts the following Saturday when Ricky and Sue had arrived as arranged. Carol was busy in the kitchen, cooking, and had declined Danny's offer of help as he'd been writing late into the small hours so to meet a deadline for an article. The 4 had decided to get together mainly to consider the situation with regard to the police knowing who 2 of them were, but the 4 also welcomed an opportunity to spend time together and chat over the good results of their activity. Ricky Claymore's enthusiasm over the explosion of arrests around the world was balanced by Danny Green's concern that 2 of the Ace Alliance had been identified. Over the meal, though, it was Carol who calmed the fears of her husband. Afterwards, when the dishes were all washed and the 4 sat discussing matters with a coffee, Danny asked Sue Parry how she felt about it. "To be honest, Donny, I'm embarrassed. My poor mother just can't keep her mouth shut. She's only speculating anyway, but that's what she's like." Ricky felt he had said too much in his meeting with the girl's parents. Charming people, you understand, but wise enough to fill in all the gaps, and I feel it's my fault. "I'm not worrying, Danny," she continued. "I believe that the 2 police officers who came to see me, Hutchins and Benefit, I think their names were, I don't think they'll be telling anyone else." Danny wanted to reassure them both. "Listen, it's nobody's fault. But you don't feel you're in danger, sir?" "No, not at all." Carol gave Sue a look which encouraged her to say more. She sipped the coffee and carefully placed the mug on the table. "I believe we're all in some danger, we know that. But I don't see that either of these police officers will be adding to that danger. They assured me, just like I told you, that nothing will go down on official records about either me or Uncle Ricky." "They probably already have plenty down in records about him," Danny taunted his friend. Sue smiled and expressed again how she felt. "Of course, they wanted to know who the other 2 members of the Ace Alliance are, but when I said I wanted to say no more, they agreed with me that I should keep my lips sealed." Well, that is, they didn't argue with me about it. They were kind enough, a bit smart like policemen can be, but they said nice things about us. And they wanted to be able to contact us if they thought it would be useful in the future. I wouldn't trust all policemen. Some that have visited my dad once when he'd been involved in a strike, picketing and all that. Well, they didn't press any charges, but I wouldn't have trusted them. However, I would trust these two, and after all, it was the same inspector that you took all the information to, Danny, and we know that he certainly acted on that information. True. Danny valued what Sue had related. So what do we do then, folks? What can we do? Carol seemed unsure about her husband's question. They know about Sue and Uncle Ricky, but there's nothing we can do about it. No doubt Inspector Hutchins will not rest until he knows who we are as well. But that doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't. Danny was not sure about his wife's confidence. And how do you think Hutchins will find out about us? I don't have a clue. But we proved ourselves that you can find out what you want if you try hard. And we do not have the might of the law on our side. I think he's one of us anyway. What do you mean by one of us? Ricky was interested in that. On our side, you mean? Yes. Carol looked at Ricky, thought for a moment. When we went to the grave to pay respects to Theo, did any of us think about how much depended on his help? I mean, Dan, he could have shopped us to Stanhurst at the start. He didn't. He helped us. Hutchins would do the same. I'm sure of it. But Carol, love, you never met him. Danny didn't think even Carol's intuition could work without seeing the person face to face. No, that's true, but Sue has, and you have. Sue's not worrying, so nor will I. The two females gave each other a sisterly look. I think he'll make sure we know that he's identified us, and then he'll be happy. Feelings again, is it? Danny could never really get to grips with that. You too, Sue? She nodded. Well, Rick, we may as well go along with the ladies because I'm telling you we don't have a chance. He gave a laugh and resigned himself to the fact that they just left it at that. Ricky said he was happy enough to respect Sue's judgment, and Carol was pleased with that. He added that he really wondered what Carol had felt about him the first time she met him. Oh, I'll tell you that, Rick. Danny was elated to tell. She said that you were the kind of anti-establishment figure who would love to steal the crown jewels and give them to charity. Sir Richard Claymore ran his hand through his grey beard. Did she now? Well, was I not a good judge of character? Carol and Sue were making sure the boys knew that their female feelings were valuable. So we all agree then we do nothing. Danny wanted to be sure. Sue gave Carol a smile and said with an air of certainty, Of course. OK, so what if Sue gets contacted by Hutchins? Do we know how we decide whether we get involved? Danny wondered if it would ever happen. Half of him hoped it never would, and the other half wanted the excitement to start all over again. He also wanted to be sure that nobody made a decision for everybody else that they hadn't agreed to. It took them half an hour to check their formula for consultation before they became operational again. Sue asked, Do you want me to read it back to you so I can be sure you're happy with the way I've worded it? So she read it out to them. Before we accept assignments, it must meet these 4 conditions. 1, there must be a flora, fauna, environment connection. 2, all 4 of us must agree to become operational. 3, expert help or local information can be sought if really needed. And 4, all effort will be made to ensure continued anonymity. Afterwards, Carol produced a postcard from Donegal Town in Ireland, and it read as follows. Congratulations, you did it. Your friends on the border salute your courage. Love, Paul Dillon and the boys. That prompted Ricky to read a comment from Cajun Avery Birds. It commended the Ace Alliance for strengthening the legitimacy of genuine bird lovers while dealing a serious blow to those who exploit the birds and bringing the whole subject of aviculture into disrepute. Danny was sitting in silent contemplation. He didn't like birds in cages, but he was thinking about the bird who'd flown the cage and was living wild on the Irish border. He still had trouble sorting his feelings out about Sean. To be so dedicated to shooting and bombing his way to a united Ireland and yet to have a gentler side. Maybe Carol was right. Excuse me. He was just another human caught up in another war and didn't differ from those who fought in other wars. Not that Danny Green would have joined in any British wars anyway. He was never going to carry a gun for anyone, whatever the consequences. Carol says she didn't agree with Sean's methods, but that he was like some plants. You could admire their beauty, but not eat their fruit because it was deadly. She was able to respect Sean for his convictions, but never would she approve of the way that he processed them. Sue was happy that the four were all together. "If I was a cat, Carol," she said, "I'd be purring." "And would you be happy if we were starting something like it all over again?" "Yeah, I would. These days I feel like one of the Earth's nerve cells, and I'd have to be involved in something. I feel the planet's pain now. What about you?" "It's funny, Sue. There were times when I was really frightened, so I was. And I certainly don't have the nerves of steel you read about in books. But at the same time, I'm kind of sorry it's over. That we had to give all the information to someone else. It's like we've been training for something else." "Yeah, I feel a bit like that too, but working with Ricky helps." Sue lowered her voice. "He lets me use my own initiative, and believe me, there's a need for it. His own stuff is bad enough, but the family don't have a clue what they have in that house. The cellars are full of things, furniture and stuff, antique, I mean. It must be worth an absolute fortune, and they don't realise it." So the evening passed by, but the spirit of contentment they were feeling was not universal. On the remand wing at Pentonville Prison, Fuller, alias Stanhurst, eyed his cellmate with contempt. He was locked up with an old lag who had a series of charges to face, but was what Stanhurst considered to be a common crook. Worse than that for Stanhurst was the fact that Arthur Mullins just prattled on all day about crop circles, flying saucers, the pyramids, and Frank Sinatra. He went on from reel to reel of his endless stories with a dreadful lack of cadence. Stanhurst was very well used to the Cockney accent, but not in a monotone. At the same time as the Ace Alliance were enjoying their meeting, Stanhurst was hearing for the 15th time the Mullins theory that Sinatra was an alien plant and the words of "I did it my way" were a coded message. A science fiction fan might at least have found Mullins' ideas amusing, but to Stanhurst the endless chatter was plain torture. In the past, Stanhurst had held a fair bit of authority in prison, but the newspapers had led nearly all people, including the prison population, to feel disgusted at the exploitation of wildlife. And Stanhurst had especially felt the contempt of many prisoners. When a young Afro-Caribbean lad had spat in the major's face in the exercise yard, a well-known London gang member was nearby when it happened, and as Stanhurst cursed the young man, this older criminal said loudly in Stanhurst's ear, "Don't even think about it, sunshine." Stanhurst, humiliated more than for many years, uncurled his clenched fist. Worse still, his solicitor had informed him that he must expect the worst. "Mr. Stanhurst, Mr. Fuller," the solicitor had said in an indifferent tone, "you shot a man in cold blood in front of police witnesses. There's a string of evidence that circles the globe about your trade in livestock. I can pick holes in weak cases and raise doubt where there is any doubt to raise. I can appeal to the hearts and emotions of jury members where possible, and I can let you lie where it might help you. But the police have a very strong case that is impenetrable. Keeping on about William of Normandy will not impress me or the judge, and if you seek my honest opinion, were he here, I'm sure that the Norman conqueror would see the wisdom in the case of just pleading guilty on all charges." Stanhurst hurled his copy of the Times at Mullins and cursed the anonymous Ace Alliance. The weeks drifted on into months, and autumn's colourful cardigan was exchanged for the grey overcoat of winter. Danny and Carol Green had broken the ice on their garden berth for 5 consecutive days, and the moonlit night seemed to be the antonym of the summer's sun. Indeed, it seemed almost as if it was the cold golden light reflected from the lunar body that froze everything it touched, just like the Ice Queen. Life at the Greens had settled into a routine again, with Danny's writing and Carol's cleaning, cooking, and helping Danny with his research and correspondence. They also found some time at least once a week to do a little serious bird watching. Every couple of days there was something about the investigation in the news, and in the papers some speculation about the identity of the Ace Alliance. And the red herring Inspector Hutchins had promised Sue Parry had them running round in circles. At a press conference he'd expressed his appreciation for the Ace Alliance, When asked about them, he said he would only tell the press that the Ace Alliance involved 4 people. One was a lecturer at one of Britain's best universities, another was a journalist, one was a gamekeeper, and the 4th a scientist and not resident of the British Isles. And he then asked the press men and women to respect the Alliance's wish for their identities to remain unknown. David Brenton MP had written a letter to The Guardian in praise of the Ace Alliance, and also he had used Theodore Adrias as an example of a hard-working, kindly and decent immigrant, disproving the suggestions that foreigner came to Britain to scrounge. He felt that in London there should be some memorial to this man who had helped the Ace Alliance and who had given his life in order to save the life of a young policeman. Around the globe, the arrests continued, and in London the police prepared their case against Stanhurst and his associates, very unhurriedly, determined that the full scope of this evil trade be brought to the attention of the court and the nation. The wildlife officers, like the Ace Alliance, were very glad that the raid in Clapham and all the other activity had so caught the imagination of the public, meaning that people were much more aware of the depth of animal suffering and exploitation than they had ever been before. Bennett was a changed man, and his wife had brought him a pair of binoculars, and they were to be found often in the countryside watching birds, and were now members of the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. He got an occasional twinge of pain in his hand, but that only reminded him of how precious all life is. Hutchins was a little amused at his sergeant's new hobby, but then he'd always had a measure of interest in the wild things around him. Sue Parry and Sir Richard Claymore were busy. There really was a great deal of work in valuing, sorting, cataloguing, cleaning all that was in Ricky's warehouse. Also, there was to be a couple of years' work at least in the cellar of the Claymore family home. Ricky and Sue's dad had given her good advice about her newly inherited property, and she had visited the various tenants, assuring them that their rents would remain the same, and acquainting herself with their new possessions. A healthy stock of commercial premises on valuable land, and all near to Theo's cafe, which she had also inherited. She really was enjoying living in the main lodge of the Willow Stream estate, where Ricky's brother Charles Lord Bridford and his Lady Claudette resided, and were trying to strike the balance by making the estate pay by allowing more public access but still retaining some privacy. There was something else here beside the antiques and the beautiful countryside that attracted Sue's attention. William Claymore, son of Charles and Claudette, was 22 years old. He had finished his education at Oxford and refused point blank to follow his older brother into the traditional family army regiment. At the time of Sue's arrival on the estate, William was working as a volunteer at the local children's home. He was in many ways a younger version of his Uncle Richard, and he shared his uncle's sense of humour, whereas his pleasant father was a very serious man. From the first meeting at the sizable family home, the attraction between them had been obvious to all. Lady Claudette was not at all put out to have this working-class Cockney girl at her table as a guest, but she was not so keen to see her son entranced by Sue's every move. She'd always imagined that he, like his father, would marry a person from his own social base. It wasn't that she thought aristocrats were better, but rather that people with shared backgrounds could make a go of a marriage better. Yet, despite herself, she found Sue's down-to-earth and unpretentious attitude very attractive, and found herself walking in the evenings with Sue and sharing secrets of the house and garden with her. When, one evening, they ended up at the stables, and Sue confessed that the nearest she had come to riding a horse was donkey rides at the seaside as a child, Lady Claudette promised that she would take Sue horse riding, even pointing out Columbine, an expensive Appaloosa, as a suitable mount for her. Sue fell in love with the animal at first sight, and Claudette was surprised as Sue smoothed the creature's neck how much this beautiful horse took to her. As they walked back to the house, Claudette offered some commendation. "Ricky was telling me that you identified an Indian vase in his warehouse as being older than he thought." "Oh, did he tell you about that?" Sue smiled at her host. "A bit jammy, really. I had just the right page of the right book open at the right time." Sue didn't realise it, but her modesty impressed Lady Claudette more than a refined accent ever would. Claudette was soon going to find herself in the difficult situation of wanting her son to be wed to a girl she thought unsuitable. Her head was saying that such a romance was impossible, but her heart was saying that this girl was more of a lady, though young, than some of the greatest ones she played polo with. She felt that Princess Anne once she got used to the accent, would respect and love this girl were she to meet her more than some of those landed girls who spent much of their time talking about whichever friend was absent. So, that seems a good place to pause. Romance is in the air for Sue. Is it possible? Could this work out? Also, the Ace Alliance are thinking, what if there was another case like this? They have a formula to decide whether they'll get involved or not. I think I might feel a sequel coming on. Hope you've enjoyed this story to this point, and the next episode will follow soon. Part 3 of this chapter 22, The Letter. Thanks very much for listening, and Kate and I would like to send love and peace to all of you. Bye bye for now. Bye.